The subject is the luchot, the tablets, two of them. It seems pretty obvious from texts, Talmudic sources, that there were two tablets. I mean, we kind of go by the what we've always been fed, images and etc. This is actually the tablets of the law as depicted at the entrance of the Budapest Shul. And that's what you'll normally see, and very controversial shape, as we'll discuss shortly. So we find out about those luchot in a couple of verses in this week's parsha, just before we're about to lose them. Sadly, it is often just before we're about to lose something that we realize how precious it is. And it's true of material possessions, it's true of people. And we don't always value them when we have it. And then suddenly when we realize that we're going to have to do with that. So this is Moshe on Mount Sinai. After receiving the Ten Commandments on initially on Shavuot, Moshe goes up to the mountain. He spends 40 I was going to say years, 40 days without food or drink, and he's learning Torah. And when that's finished, then Hashem gives him Luchot Ha'edut, Luchot Even, the tablets of the covenant of the pact, stone tablets inscribed by the finger of Hashem, Ktuvim Be'etzba Elokim. They inscribed with the finger of Hashem. But as that 40-day sojourn on Mount Sinai comes to an end, of course, we know there's tragedy. And they're busy getting uptight about Moshe being late, and they agitate for the building of a calf, which Aaron cannot stop, which Hur attempted to stop. He lost his life. And Hashem says to Moshe, you got to go downstairs, you got to go down and go back to your people because they've acted badly. They have turned away from what I taught them to do. They made themselves this Egel Masecha, this molten calf, and they're bowing down to it, and they're saying, this is your God who has brought you out of the land of Egypt. And so Moshe takes the tablets that he has with him, coming down from the mountain. And this is how they're described. And that's kind of the most we're going to know about the tablets from the text directly, and the rest is the oral law. So we know that they were written by Hashem, because that was in the previous verse. Hashem gave it to him. It says written by his hand. We know they're made of stone. And here we're told that they are ktuvim beshnei evreihem. They're written on both of their sides. Mizeu, mizem ktuvim, they're written on both sides. And furthermore, haluchot, Maselokim. The tablets are God's work. In other words, he created the tablets. Hamichtav michtav Elokim. And the writing is God's writing. Charut ala luchot. It is inscribed on the tablets. So that's what we know from the text. Incidentally, from the fact that the word luchot is written what we call defective, in other words, got the three dots under the lamed rather than the vav. From there, we learn that it was like one tablet, meaning that they were exactly the same, because that reason is singular with that vowels, of course. So, a few things we want to talk about. Firstly, the shape of the luchot. We've always seen them rounded at the top. You will see that embroidered on the parochet in many shuls. You will see that embroidered on Torah covers in many places. As I showed you, the Budapest shul and many other. That's always kind of the association we have with the appearance of the tablets, kind of maybe like rectangular with the kind of dome rounded top. It does not have a Jewish source at all. So there's no reason. In fact, in our sources, it talks about the luchot being square. I never noticed this before, not before, as a kid. but I grew up on this publication. It's a monthly, Schmusen mit Kinder und Jugend, which means conversations with the youth and children. And it was a Monat Heft, so it was a monthly. This one's dated, that's 1943. And to wait eagerly for this to arrive in the post, not back in 43, but even in the 60s when it was coming out, and it continues to be published until late 60s, I think. And it was really a treat. Well, here discovered later that there was also an English version of it called Talks and Tales. It was a monthly. If you look at here's a table of contents. Aleph, when did this happen? Did you know? Zachor, remember? This is obviously a Purim Adar version. Balala, that night? And other interesting articles, and just to devour it from cover to cover. Either in Yiddish, or I used to get the French version as well sometimes when I was a kid. And depicted on the left of the cover are the three pillars on which the world stands. That's self-explanatory. And to the right is a depiction of the luchot. As you can see, they look more like two cubes than anything else here. You can zoom in on them, and you get kind of two cubes. I never really pay attention to that as a child, but already this is back in 1943. It was being depicted that way in a Chabad publication under the previous Lubavitch Rebbe. It was far more recently that the Rebbe actually came out with a campaign to change this. And explained that there was no good reason to draw the luchot, to depict them with the round, that it was of non-Jewish origin in terms of artists that had drawn it that way, and encouraging people to do the switch. So interestingly, this is the logo of the chief rabbinate of Israel, with the luchot in the middle. And that remained their logo until 11 years ago. So 2011, 2015, at which point they changed to the square. So it took a while. Changing an image is never easy. So that's as far as the shape. Size. So as I said, cubes, 6 cubits by 6 cubits. A cubit, well, is about sorry, I'm wrong, not cubits. That would be huge. Handbreadths. Handbreadth is about 4 or 5 centimeters. So if you take it, the total volume of the luchot, depending, because they're different measurements. The two great authorities of recent times that debated what is what's the measurement of a cubit of a length, all the Torah measurements. But of course, we wish there would be a metric. It would make it a lot easier. So they kind of did the conversions for us. Reb Chaim Naeh is the one authority, and he kind of used smaller measurements, and the Chazon Ish, who actually had much larger measurements. If you take those dimensions of 6 hand breadths by 6 hand breadths, and according to most opinions, the thickness was 3 hand breadths, you get something like 48 cubic centimeters, which is the equivalent of 200 liters. Now, considering they were made of sapphire, that would be a weight of close to 800 kilos. If you follow the larger measurement, if you go by the smaller measurement, it would be 450 kilos, which is not the kind of thing people, humans, easily. As I showed you before in the picture, they've used that they were actually completely cubic, each of them. That would double their thickness. Then we'll be talking about, a ton and a half plus. And there's Moshe walking down the mountain with the with those tablets, 2 of them. carrying a weight of conservatively a ton. If you go by the most conservative measurements. How do you do it? And maybe the story is that you just dropped them because they got too heavy. Not exactly, but almost. An explanation given to how he was able to carry that weight is that because they were divine and they had the words of Hashem in them, they almost carried themselves. For those who attended the shiur 2 weeks ago, yeah, uh, talked about the ark that it carried its carriers. So it would seem like those people were holding it by the handles and they were carrying them, but actually they were being carried, and we discussed the implications, of that, the deeper meaning of that. Something like that, because the tablets had the word of Hashem inscribed in them, that made them kind of buoyant. And it wasn't difficult for Moshe, even though he was a big man, and even though he must have been very strong, but it was with a lot of divine help that he was able to carry those two rather large sapphire stones. But then what happened? As Moshe came down the mountain and he saw um, the merriment around the dancing, around the golden calf, suddenly found himself in the presence of extreme impurity, the opposite of what those tablets represented, the word of Hashem, total purity. And here is idolatry. And the letters, the Medrash describes, flew away back to heaven. And what's he left with? Just plain stones, hundreds of kilos of stone, which he could no longer carry as a human being, and they fell down, and they smashed. How was it written? So we saw an allusion to that when it described the writing as on both sides. So it was actually kind of written on this side of the page, right? But it went right through. It was a thick stone, and it was engraved through and through. Um, and we'll come back to the meaning of that in a moment. But it was a very interesting feat. Um, and the miracle of it was that what you saw on the other side, on the back side, wasn't a mirror image, but somehow the um, the pictures, the letters rearranged. For those of you who use an iPhone, when you take a selfie, normally you get all the letters, in mirror image. And iPhone has had a feature for a while where suddenly, when you finish taking the picture, it kind of de-mirror images it. So there was such a miracle of technology, well, no, of divine assistance, right through. So that as the letters kind of appeared on the other side, they could be read in the correct manner. So it was very interesting kind of engraving. Of course, um, there were some challenges, and here was one of them. Oh, forgot to show you this picture, but that's the luchot at the entrance to the Great Synagogue in Johannesburg, in Jerusalem. Yeah. So now, who needs to go to the optometrist? What do we have here? We have a final mem. We have a samach. Okay. Picture this being engraved in a stone tablet through and through. The part that's engraved is, of course, the black. What happens to this little guy in the middle? Under normal circumstances, if you did an engraving of a full circle or a half square, half circle, the middle would fall out. And then it would just be a big hole, and it wouldn't be read as a letter. So this is how the Talmud in Shabbat describes it. The letters Mem and Samach in the tablets were standing miraculously, even though it was chiseled all the way through the tablets. The middle section remained somehow, so that those letters didn't fall out, but remained in place, and that's a well-known miracle. Interestingly, if you look in the Jerusalem Talmud, Talmud Yerushalmi, you will find many opinions as to exactly how it was engraved, some which I don't quite understand. According to the Jerusalem Talmud, that's the one here in Shkalim, Rav Chanina ben Gamliel says there were five on each tablet. That's how we always imagined it. They were on the right-hand side, the mitzvot between man and Hashem. On the left-hand side, the commandments between man and man. Um, and uh, that's how we always understood it, five and five. The rabbi said there was actually 10 on each tablet. So they had two tablets, separate tablets, and had 10 of them. And he brings a verse to substantiate that. He informed you of his covenant, which he had commanded you to do. The 10 words, 10 on each tablet. Shimon Bar Yochai said there were 20 on each tablet. So that would be the opinion that it was kind of back to back and written through and through. He informed you of his covenant, which he had commanded you to do. The 10 words, 20 on each tablet. And you have the opinion of Simai, who says 40 on each tablet, and it is written on each side, they were written a square. So according to Simai, you actually had those cubes, and it was written on each side, engraved through and through. How that worked, I mean, the miracle, becomes bigger and bigger with each successive opinion in the Jerusalem Talmud, because not only did you have letters engraved through and through, but you also had letters, going this way and that way on a collision course, and how all that was legible from all four sides, just baffles the mind. Of course, there weren't too many people who saw the tablets because, as you know, these didn't make it very far. But when Moshe eventually got the second set of tablets, 80 days later, he placed it in the ark. It wasn't something which was displayed to the public, so it's not like anybody could really do a proper study and work out, how exactly those miracles occurred. Even by definition, that wouldn't be possible. You can't really make studies and work out, how miracles happen. What is the significance of the engraving, and why engrave it, through and through and from all sides? I think this teaches us the inseparability of text and medium. Normal writing is done on paper, and you use ink, and then you can take an eraser and you can rub off, and things can, be removed. So normally you have paper is a bit more difficult. It's very thin. They used to write on parchment, and then you use ink to write, and you could rub off the ink with a kind of razor blade, and then maybe a bit of parchment would come off with it, but you could separate the message from the medium, the writing from the medium. With engraving, this is not the case. With engraving, you cannot remove the letters because they are carved in, and there's no way you take them off. If they are engraved through and through, there's nothing you can do. I mean, I had a very unfortunate situation with a tombstone that was engraved for a husband, for his late wife, by a husband for his late wife. And when the stonemason arrived at the cemetery, he discovered that the children of this woman from her first husband had actually erected a tombstone already, and therefore, we couldn't have two. And he was very, very upset. And, he spoke to the stonemason, who took the stone back, but of course charged him a lot of money because now, after he removed the writing, he had a much thinner stone. And I wouldn't be able to sell for the full price. It'd have to be sold for a discount. So it cost him quite a bit of money. Fortunately, I think it was Rabbi Shur, late Rabbi Shur, had not engraved the tombstone through and through. Had he done that, then one wouldn't be able to recycle it. So even engraving, has the ability of being kind of skimmed off, removing the top layer and separating it. But if you engrave through and through, then it can never be erased. You can't. There's nothing you can do because the message goes all the way through. Of course, this is a metaphor for this is the covenant that's been entered into by the Jewish people with Hashem, and it shows the inseparability of the message of Torah um, and its connection with the people, where a Jew cannot be separated from Torah. It's not like a letter that can be erased with an eraser or or an X-Acto blade. Nor is it even a stone where you would have to kind of skim off to remove the message. It's a stone that is engraved through and through. If you want to take that message of our connection with Torah and the inseparability, then if you follow the opinion, I forget the name now, of the Jerusalem Talmud, that it was engraved on all four sides, it kind of shows an even deeper connection and bonding with the words of Torah, with the words of the covenant, and how we are kind of absolutely intertwined with the Torah. Now, when the Torah describes the inscription of the Luchot, it uses the following words. Let me just get it back on here first. Oh, okay, this was the verse. Okay, the writing was God's writing, incised upon the tablets, and the word is charut. Remember that in the Torah there are no vowels. So the word can be read not as charut, but now I need to quickly go back to the style we want, but as cherut. And this is where the famous Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, sorry, I didn't put the English in, says, don't read it as charut, which means engraved, but as cherut, which means freedom. And the Mishnah concludes, who is a ben chorin, who is a true free person? One who engages in Torah. En lecha ben chorin ela misha osek b'talmud Torah. Now, we normally think that Torah is restrictive, that Torah cramps our style, that Torah takes away our freedom. Mishnah seems to say the opposite, that by using the words cherut, which can also read as, by using the word charut, which can also be read as cherut, Hashem is saying, I'm giving you freedom. What is freedom? Well, in Hebrew, there are two words for freedom, and they're very different. The one is chofshi. The other one is cherut. What's the difference? One expresses a fundamental liberty, the other just freedom. So, for example, in Hebrew, if you have a day of work and you wanted to call a friend and say, let's go fishing, you would say, Yesh li yom chofesh, from the word chofshi. My boss said I can have a day off. I've got no obligations. A vacation is called a chofesh. And the big, June, July vacation, or whenever they have a July, August holiday, is a chofesh agadol, because it spans several weeks. The problem with that is that if you're a parent, your children are completely without any structure, they're just free. The other word there, cherut, means liberty. Liberty means that no outside factors are holding you. It doesn't mean you're without a framework. It doesn't mean that you haven't got rules. It just means that you're not bound to any outside forces. And that's it's a nuance. It's more difficult to pick it up in the English, because liberty and freedom are very close synonyms. When Hashem said to Pharaoh, "Let my people go," it was "Shalach et ami v'yavduni." Let my people go, and they will serve me. Let my people go. That means they need to be freed from you, and they therefore have to have that liberty of being able to serve Hashem, and that structure and that connection of being engraved with Torah, is powerfully freeing by connecting, and that's what the Mishnah means in Pirkei Avot when it says that by connecting with Torah, you actually are achieving freedom or liberty. Famous Liberty Bell in Philadelphia by Independence Hall, of course, with the well-known crack in the actual bell. I don't know if you can see the writing, but I did manage to get the picture zoomed in. Proclaim liberty throughout the land and unto all its inhabitants thereof. That's from Leviticus, chapter 25, and that was chosen to be put there where America declared its independence. The idea was that there would be a constitution, there would be obligations, there would be law, but they would be free to operate as equals, and they wouldn't be under the oppression of how they perceive the British people at the time. And this is the cherut that's achieved through Torah, the liberty that's achieved through Torah. It frees you from the bonds of the outside world, connects you in that powerful and graved way, and you become a true free person. Thank you.